The idea of a genre trope is thought of as a series of motifs, cliches, and rhetorical devices that help to define a genre and allows a reader to have some idea of what they're going in for before starting a story. As discussed in Film Art and Introduction, no genre can be defined in a single hard and fast way. Some genres stand out by their subjects or themes. This comes from Broadwell and Thompson discussing science fiction and westerns. Broadwell and Thompson essentially come to the conclusion that the purpose of a genre is to provide a way of finding a film they want to see. That genre is typically decided by readers and viewers based on repeated settings, character archetypes, and themes. In this case, Marshal Law takes specific genre tropes and expectations and defies these in order to comment on the genre as a whole. The accepted definition for superhero largely comes from the work of Peter Coogan in his essay, The Definition of the Superhero. Coogan's work fundamentally boils the elements of the superhero genre down to three key points: mission, powers, and identity. Coogan's thoughts regarding mission boil down to this. The superhero's mission is pro-social and selfless, which means that his fight against evil must fit in with an existing, perfused mores of society and must not be intended to benefit or further his own agenda. This fits in well with traditional superheroes such as Superman, Batman, and Captain America. Superman is a pillar of truth, justice, and a better tomorrow by devoting his life to the betterment of those on his adopted world. This can be seen as early as his first appearance in Action Comics #1, and frequently reaffirmed even 85 years after its publication. Batman's reason for being is to avenge the deaths of his parents, by spending the rest of his life warring on all criminals. A primary goal is to eradicate criminals so no child goes through what he went through. For powers, Coogan notes that abilities are the hero's powers or superpowers, to emphasize the exaggeration inherent in the superhero genre, and they are the first area of real difference between Superman and his pulp and science fiction predecessors. It's notable that he does make reference to both powers and superpowers when it comes to superheroes. While Superman, who is mentioned here, is a superpowered being capable of flight, super speed, heat vision, and other abilities, there are others within the superhero genre that do lack these abilities, but are still considered above average, such as Batman.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
The idea of identity is summarized as the element comprising the codename and the costume, with the secret identity being a customary counterpart to the codename. With Superman and Batman, there's a clear distinction between their hero identities and Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. All-star Superman artist Frank Quitely even goes to extensive lengths to show the difference in how Clark carries himself when his civilian identity compared to Superman. The costume, which is part of identity, can be discussed in the same vein as identity, and is explored well in the book The Superhero Costume, that the relationship between dress and behavior is so commonly understood that people will modify their behavior to suit their clothes. For the case of Superman, their change in identity is completed by changing their clothing. With 1987's Marshal Law, we see a number of these elements used to comment on the then current state of superhero fiction. In Marshal Law, we see that superheroes, or at least superpowered beings, exist primarily due to human experimentation. This created some of the first superpowered beings, such as Public Spirit. However, the vast majority of superpowered beings are volunteers from a war known as the Zone. Years have now passed, and these veterans are now back in the general population, complete with superpowers. Upon Marshal Law's introduction in the first issue, he states to the audience, "I'm a hero hunter. I hunt heroes. Haven't found any yet." These words tell us three things about the world he lives in: that superheroes, or at least heroes, exist, that the definition of a hero is more about having abilities rather than morality, and that Marshal Law feels there is no such thing as a true hero. Just from the opening issue, we see that this is true. The world is very dark. Those with powers frequently misuse them for their own agenda. This is shown most heavily through the appearance of Sleep Man, a Batman-like figure dressed entirely in black and running across rooftops at night. When he comes across a young woman scantily clad, alone in a dangerous neighborhood, instead of rescuing her, he decides to rape and murder her. When reading just the first few pages of Marshal Law, you're confronted by the stark reality that this is not going to be like your everyday superhero story. Marshal Law makes it very clear from its opening issues that just because there are people who have superhuman abilities and former war veterans, this does not mean they are good people or indeed heroes. As Marshall states, he hunts heroes, but he's not actually found any. When it comes to costumes, with the exception of Public Spirit and perhaps Sleep Man, the vast majority of heroes contain characters that heavily lean towards the sexual. The sirens are sexual by nature, so show a lot of skin. Even minor characters such as Suicider has a heavily suggestive statement, "Nuke me slowly," across his chest. Marshal Law himself has a costume heavily reminiscent of the leather daddy role in BDSM. Tight black leather, a policeman's cap, chains, and even barbed wire wrapped around his arm. The idea of clothes modifying someone's behavior can very much be seen in both Marshal Law and the book's primary antagonist, Sleep Man. When home with his girlfriend, Marshal Law, real name Joe Gilmore, dresses in very ordinary clothing, a plain white t-shirt and jeans. With Sleep Man, the difference is far more striking, especially as we get to know Sleep Man's secret identity before knowing they're the same person. His real identity, Danny, is straightforward and clean-cut, frequently shown in a police uniform and a central member of police intelligence. The shocking fact that the same person also dresses in all black, with a paper bag over his head, elongated talons on each hand, and enjoys murder and rape, is also the young man who's been assisting Marshall is made more uncomfortable by the very innocent and straight-laced persona we come to know in his secret identity. The idea that even those that seem like they have the best intentions can secretly be some of the vilest among us. The story's own Superman stand-in, Public Spirit, while not Sleep Man as Marshall initially thought, is still a genuinely bad person. It's his actions that give rise to Sleep Man in the first place, as when Virgo, Spirit's fiancée, tells him she's pregnant, he decides to drown her so not to be tied down by a child and wife when his plan is to travel out into space. The fact that his efforts, though brutal, are unsuccessful leads to Sleep Man. Mills and O'Neill make it very clear through these 6 issues that there is no such thing as a real superhero, one that is both a hero and has superhuman abilities. Later works such as Marshal Law, Kingdom of the Blind, takes explicit aim at characters such as Batman, with allegories such as Private Eye, spouting lines such as, "No, old chap, I vowed I won't sink to their level. I'll maim, mutilate, electrocute, gas or burn them, but I won't kill them." A harsh commentary on Batman's own actions in his comics despite his vow never to kill. Marshal Law leads heavily into genre conventions in order to explain some of the genre's failings, or simply overlooked aspects that should be commented on. While largely overshadowed by the likes of Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns, Marshal Law is a title that should not be forgotten, particularly for its biting commentary on what truly makes someone a superhero.